On a different subject, I wanted to ask you about Huawei. Last hour, the company's chief security officer for the United States joined us along with its outside legal counsel. And here's what security officer Andy Purdy said.
The U.S. is worried more about the country, China, than about the company Huawei. And the United States is not ready to address the most sophisticated cybersecurity risks generally. So they're bending over backwards to try to make sure America's safe. Right. And we think we got to, ramp down the rhetoric and address real cybersecurity.
Let me ask you a question.
So I know we're springing this on you, Marc, but how do you see this playing out? Is it a bargaining chip in the eventual deal with China, or is this something that's not going to change regardless of trade?
Well, as the president said, it's possible that it gets included in a trade deal, but I think it is more than that, Joe. The reality is that Huawei is not a private company, as Americans are familiar with here in the United States. It is more or less a wholly owned subsidiary of the Communist Party of China. And the reality is what Huawei has been doing, the reason there's sanctions on it now is because they've been facilitating and aiding the government in Iran with technology. And that's why the most recent sanctions were applied to Huawei. So they need to stop those actions, stop cooperating with Iran at this time if they want to actually work with the United States.
Hey, Marc, though, but just to put a fine point on that, is it doing business with Iran that we think is the problem, or is the national security threat the problem? And if it's the national security threat, how do you get around that via a trade deal?
To answer your question, I think it's both. I think the most recent problem was their cooperation with Iran when we were applying sanctions to Iran. But I think the way you get around it is the reality is that China needs a trade deal, too. Their economy is hurting because of the pressure that Donald Trump has applied to them. And so if they want to change their ways, we are more than open to a trade deal. The United States wants to make a trade deal, but China has to change its actions. They have to change their forced transfer of technology. They have to change their stealing of intellectual property, and they have to change some of the actions of companies like Huawei.
Marc, one of Huawei's points, the point of the outside counsel who was talking to us, said that, look, the reason that we're against this action from the United States is because it doesn't follow the constitutionality of the United States, that it's simply Congress that is doing this, that the executive branch hasn't stepped in and taken these actions. Their entire case could probably be undermined if the executive branch did step up and say that they are banning them. What do you say to that?
Yeah, so he's actually incorrect in his facts. There is the National Defense Authorization Act, which is legislation, which is what they're challenging in court to say that Congress can't target an individual company. But separately, the administration has acted, and most recently the sanctions were applied by the executive branch. So their case is against the legislative branch and actions that Congress put forward. But in fact, this administration has acted as well in sanctioning Huawei.
Marc, we've got, I don't know how close, I'm sure you watch Squawk Box every morning, so you probably have seen the 10-year, I mean, it's very odd what we're seeing in sovereigns and our own treasuries in this country in terms of the growth outlook for the United States. There are some things that are different, obviously, inflation is low, but there are some warning signals that maybe the trade initiatives are starting to slow the global economy. Is there a concern? Is the vice president concerned? What are you hearing?
Well, Joe, because I'm a loyal follower of Squawk Box, you'll know that I was listening to you on the way in this morning, and I agree wholeheartedly with the commentary. I think it was Becky who said that the inverted yield curve has predicted 7 of the last 4 recessions. And so, yes, we remember that in the first quarter there was an inverted yield curve, and everybody was expecting that growth would be diminishing, that employment would be down. And in fact, we had a 3.2% GDP in the first quarter, which blew way past expectations. And you actually saw employment numbers that reached the lowest unemployment in 50 years for our country. So while there is an inverted yield curve at the moment, there's probably a lot of factors that are part of that. And I think that as well you see, as you were commenting, that interest rates in Europe are basically negative at this point. And so there's a question about monetary policy in the United States and how that impacts it as well.
So were you just listening this morning, Marc, or because you were coming on?
I told you, Joe, I'm a loyal listener. I'm regularly listening.
You missed all this Steele dossier and Stormy Daniels stuff over on CNN. I mean, you sure you...
That's another reason why I'm a loyal follower here at CNBC.
Okay, good. All right. You DVR everything else. Andrew watches later. Anyway, Marc, thanks, Marc. Thank you for joining us today. And we'd love to, it must be a big deal for you getting on the show. If you want to come on again, we'd love to have you on again sometime.
I'll come on any day. We look forward to having you all with the Vice President tomorrow up in Ottawa.